Being part of Ombi has allowed me a few privileges. We've gone down to Urbnsurf at Melbourne 6 times and we've caught multiple waves there. But what you don't know, with my shaping background, over those 6 trips, I've taken 18 boards down to the pool trying to find the magic board. And it's been driving me crazy because when I surf the wave, I want to utilize as much of the wave space as possible. And I found that I get tons of speed, but maybe the top turn wasn't working. Something was off. So I went back home, designed 3 new boards that were slightly smaller so that they'd fit into the wave. But then I focused a lot of my attention on the tail shapes, and the outcome really surprised me. And this is what I want to show you guys today, because I think this might be helpful for you to find the perfect board for the pool. The wave at Urbnsurf, it's super fun, but it isn't like an ocean wave. An ocean wave has a real big power zone at the bottom. It's a lot more forgiving, where at Urbnsurf, I find that if you're not in the pocket, which can easily happen, it does become a bit more harder to surf. So let me explain waves to you. So what happens generally, the bottom part of the wave, water draws up, and we'll call that power. And the top throws down, and we'll call that speed. So when you're surfing, we're required to surf with speed, power, and flow. And this is what I've been searching for on all my trips down to the pool, is the board that's going to help me tap into that speed, power, and flow. So at Urbnsurf, the waves are a bit more complicated. You get tons of push and tons of speed from it. But in terms of the lift, the lip isn't vertical, it's a bit more slopey. So I'm looking for something that allows me to get my board all the way around and back into the pocket with speed and flow. So I designed 3 different tail shapes. The first one being a square tail, and it looked something like this. Now, the idea around the square tail is that when you press down on the tail, it displaces a lot of water. So especially out on the shoulder where the wave's not flat, I'm hoping that that tail pushes back and gives me speed to come around. But the square tail has a very straight rail, which is going to give me speed off the bottom, trying to get me to the top of the wave. So I'm interested to see how that's going to perform. Tail 2 was a round tail. Now the interesting fact about the round tail is that it's a lot more shorter. So if I superimpose the square tail, you can see that the round tail starts turning in earlier, which means that it's going to want to go into turns with a lot more agility and a lot quicker. So I want to know, is that will the round tail get me to do tighter turns in the pocket, and is this going to be the magic board for the pool? Thirdly, I designed a swallowtail. So the swallowtail looks something like that. It's got the same straight outline as tail 1, so the speed should be fine. The difference is that when you push down on this tail, water comes up and holds on to the board. So it kind of acts like a bit of a fin and a stabilizer. So this will allow me to draw cleaner, longer lines. And I want to see if the cleaner, longer lines will get me the win. So tail 1 is going to give me a lot of speed and drive, but hopefully maintain the speed and drive coming out of the turn. Tail 2, I know that's going to be easier to turn, so potentially I might do a lot more tighter surfing from tail 2. Tail 3, I'll be able to draw cleaner, faster lines. So I'm presuming it's going to get me there a lot more quicker. So out of those 3 tails, I'm very interested to see how the experiment goes at the pool and which one's going to be the magic board. what I'm going to endeavor to do for the audience sitting at home watching from their couches is I want to give you two perspectives. The shaper's perspective of how the board's performing, but then also the coach's perspective to see whether I'm surfing with speed, power and flow, or whether I'm falling short of the mark, and is it the board's problem, is it technique, or is it just the wave? All of these boards are shaped based off the similar dimensions. The only difference is the tails. So when I take off on the first one, which is a square tail, I go a little bit deep and I hit a bit of a wobble, but then when I put the board on rail, the amount of squirt that wide square tail is giving me is really impressive, and I enjoyed that. When I came off the top, I go a bit flat and the board pivots, but it does release quite nicely. So even though I overturned, I didn't hate it. And then again, as I go on rail, the projection there up to my target, I really enjoyed that part of the board. So the hold is fantastic. On the turn itself, first time on the board, I'm surfing it safe. Whenever I go flat, the board wants to release, which is a good thing because it does suggest to me that I've got the hold and I've got the release, which is what I was looking for. Now I just got to figure out how to control that. Here we are reviewing the round tail, and the board paddles in really well. The takeoff was pretty decent. I wasn't fussed about the takeoff. The interesting thing is, compared to the first board, when I go into the bottom turn, so I'm leaning into the turn, the amount of squirt and drive and how tight the turn was so much more impressive. So what I meant by that is I could come a little bit more squarer off the bottom, whereas the square tail kind of wanted to push me out there. So the round tail off the bottom turn was the best board, but here's the interesting part. Watch the top turn. So I set up beautifully right on the lip, on the nice part of it. So I start to turn and kind of the board pivots almost too quick and I get stuck. So it almost overturned, I went a bit flat and I got hung up at the top of the wave, which kind of ruined the moment for the rest of that wave. So I definitely feel that the round tail is overperforming and I have to really concentrate on making it take the line that I want it to take. This is the second wave on the round tail, and I must say that I did enjoy how it took off, how it goes into the bottom turn, and the hold and the setup that it provided over there for me felt very, very good. Now the top turn, I really had to concentrate on don't overturn, don't force it, hold. And when I did that, the tail performed quite nicely. Again, it set it up really well, and I could surf a lot more sort of vertical because of that setup. But then I really had to concentrate on coming out of those turns and not wanting to overturn the board. So the problem with a board that requires a lot of attention is that you start to not be in the moment and you're thinking kind of what the board needs rather than having your focus on the wave. So I do like a board that doesn't require any thought process. You do something and the board responds straight away. So I did prefer the square tail over the round tail for that reason. So here we have the swallowtail and wave one. It takes the drop fairly nicely. Now bear in mind I was used to the round tail, which was really loose and set up well. So I used the same technique expecting the same result. But as I go into the bottom turn, the board feels like it wants to track straighter. So it feels to me like the board wants to take that line, whereas with the round tail, it happily took that line. So where I expected turning, the board just went straight. So there's a bit of a wobble that I hit there. So if we go back and look at the foam line, so what I mean by that, watch the line that the white water leaves behind, because it's a clue as to how the board moves. So as I put the board on rail and I'm expecting to turn, watch my projection over there. So can you see how much more straighter that is? And I think a lot of that attribute has got to do with the outline of the board and the swallowtail wanting to draw straighter, cleaner lines. So it kind of messed up my setup, and it ruined my setup on that bottom turn. So I do a little bit of a recovery, and I kind of do a bit of a check turn because I'm really nervous about the board turning. So I surfed very flat, keeping it very, very safe. And then I try to set up the rest of the wave again. So I see something down the line that I like. Again, the board's kind of taking a bit of a flatter line. Now, take a safe high line. Now here's an interesting thing. From this point, it's drawing a nice clean arc down the line, and the turn is a lot more lateral and a lot less vertical, but it holds its speed really well all the way onto the rebound. So to review the swallowtail, I didn't like the way it came off the bottom. It kind of was like on train tracks where it had a mind of its own. But when I didn't force it to go vertical and I followed the down the line, more horizontal approach, it really liked that, and it held its speed out on the shoulder. Unfortunately, that isn't what I was looking for. I want to be able to come off the bottom, tapping into the wave's power and the wave's speed. The swallowtail almost wanted to go out onto the shoulder, which is not what I was looking for. So out of those three boards, I had this feeling that I wanted to jump onto the square tail and have another go at it. So here's me on the first wave after riding the swallowtail. Now bear in mind, the swallowtail, I felt that I had to really force it and fight the board to get it to where I wanted it to go. So now on this one, the speed off the bottom was phenomenal. I really enjoyed, if you're watching slow-mo, the drive there. It was so much more squirt and acceleration, and I could kind of hit my marks really well. The problem now is, because I had to fight the swallowtail, I've still got the feeling of what it was like to turn, and I'm using the same amount of body technique and pressure on the square tail, and I start to oversurf the square tail. So if you watch the turn, I'm almost pushing too much, and I start forcing the turn. So the tail releases, I catch a bit of a wobble, and I overturn, oversurf, and basically I go crayfishing. So paddling back, reviewing things in my head, the round tail, I kind of oversurfed it too much, and I had to concentrate really, really hard on surfing it. The swallowtail, I had to force it to do things, and it's like those two things messed up the previous wave on the square tail. So I had to physically calm down and go, all right, cool it, just take it easy, just make sure I go off the bottom and I hit power, go up to the top, and I try to connect with the speed, and I try to flow through all the turns. So if we have a look at the last wave that I surfed, and I hit play, paddling into the wave, an absolute breeze. The board fits into the curve of the wave where I can go straight down to the power of the wave really well. When I bottom turn, loads of speed and drive, tons of projection. Then when I just relax and look where I want to go, The board comes around beautifully, rebounds off the foam in the pocket really, really nicely. I look at the lip, I find the target again, and it comes up nice and vertical, bang, tail releases off the top. So in terms of what I was looking for in the Wavepool, to be able to maximize the pocket of the wave being the power on the bottom and the speed on top, this particular board helped me find flow. Now, for the level of surfing where I'm at, with the background of knowledge that I have, this board being a 5'2", that shape worked really well for me. However, if I had catching waves issues, pop-up issues, paddling issues, or anything like that, someone else might find this board an absolute nightmare and they wouldn't connect with it. So all I'm doing here is I'm sharing with you my findings as to how I analyze my surfing, I analyze my wave usage, I analyze how my body's moving, but I also analyze my equipment to make the right decisions where I can get the most feeling out of a wave. Because at the end of the day, only a surfer knows the feeling, and it's all about how much fun I can have in the water. If you felt this video was helpful to you in understanding better how surfboards work, but also how to surf a wave better, and how important that speed and power and flow is to your surfing, hit the subscribe button, because there's a wealth of more information that Ombi can help you with to make you a better surfer.